Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. These are our headlines from across the continent this evening. 1 year ago to the day, Robert Mugabe's 37-year presidency of Zimbabwe came to an end. We'll take a look back at the Mugabe era and what has changed in the past 12 months. And with just weeks to go before Joseph Kabila hands over power in the Democratic Republic of Congo, our reporters follow opposition candidate Martin Fayulu as he arrives back in Kinshasa to prepare the final stages of the election campaign. And France 24 catches up with African tech innovators at the Emerging Valley Summit in Aix-en-Provence. The event is intended to forge closer ties between the tech sectors in Europe and Africa. Thanks for watching. Now, 1 year ago today, on the 21st of November 2017, Robert Mugabe stood down as Zimbabwe's president. He dominated the country's politics for nearly 4 decades, and in particular in latter years was a controversial and divisive figure. Now, what events led to his fall, and what do Zimbabweans feel about the country's situation 1 year later? Nicolas Germain reports.
For many in Africa, Robert Mugabe is seen as a freedom fighter who obtained Zimbabwe's independence. But after nearly 4 decades in power, he had left the economy in tatters and limited individual freedoms. This was Robert Mugabe's last televised speech as president.
The Congress is due in a few weeks from now. I will preside over its processes.
2 days before his fall, he clearly showed no signs that he was ready to go swiftly. A few days earlier, he had sacked his vice president, Mnangagwa, his party's favourite, to succeed him. He wanted his wife, Grace, who's 42 years younger than him, to be the next president one day. But the elite and the army backed Mnangagwa. Tanks and soldiers had entered Harare, and finally, on November the 21st, Mugabe wrote his letter of resignation. Mnangagwa would be the next president.
Today, we are witnessing the beginning of a new and unfolding democracy.
A year on, there are mixed feelings on the streets of Harare. Some do not regret Mugabe.
I feel people feel free to speak their minds, they feel free to express themselves, and the youth are participating in startups, businesses, technology, and we are seeking the support from the government to help us.
Others point out that inflation last month soared to double digits. It reached its highest level in a decade.
Nothing has really changed. Things have actually worsened from the way they have just been worse. So really, it's sort of a disappointment.
The government says Zimbabweans enjoy more freedoms now, but that claim came unstuck in August when civilians were killed in an army crackdown on post-election protests.
Now, next to the Democratic Republic of Congo and the presidential race, which is in its final weeks ahead of the December 23rd vote earlier this month, opposition leaders picked 62-year-old Martin Fayulu as a joint candidate. Today, he touched down in Kinshasa, welcomed by thousands of supporters at the airport. Fayulu again emphasised his opposition to the use of electronic voting machines. He says it's an invitation to election fraud. France 24's Thomas Nicolin has more from Kinshasa.
Martin Fayulu's idea was to send a strong message to the authorities and the opposition as he returned to Kinshasa on Wednesday. He wanted to prove that the people of Kinshasa support his candidacy and reject the voting machines for the election.
We must get a change of power at all costs. This means that we need a presidential election, but not any election. Our aim is to take part in an honest election, which to us means using ballot papers and not a voting machine, and an updated list of voters so that Congolese people tomorrow know that the result corresponds to their vote. If the people are ready, we can only be ready. This is the people's campaign. The Congolese people said no to voting machines and yes to an honest, transparent and peaceful election.
Thousands of people were at the airport on Wednesday to welcome Martin Fayulu, and they followed him all the way to his party's headquarters, where he addressed the crowd and reaffirmed his will to unite the opposition and to win the election. The campaign starts on Thursday.
Tom and Nicolan there catching up with the day's events in Kinshasa. And now a catch-up of some of the other main stories from across Africa today. In Kenya, an armed gang abducted an Italian volunteer from a village in southeast Kenya. The raid also injured 5 residents of the village, including 3 children. The 23-year-old charity worker was taken after dark on Tuesday evening in Chakama, a small village in the coastal Kilifi County. Police have said neither the reasons for the attack nor the identity of the attackers had been established. Kidnappings of foreigners are a rare occurrence in Kenya. It takes place every 3 years, and this time round it's in Marrakesh. The Afri Cities Summit brings together local government representatives from across the continent. 3,000 people have converged on the Moroccan city for the next few days to discuss issues as varied as migration, water, waste management and the environment. The idea is for city-to-city connections to be formed, transcending national and regional boundaries. Sustainable development is the theme of this, the 8th edition of Afri-Cities. Now, might European museums displaying African artwork like Paris's Quai Branly see whole sections of their collection emptied? A report to be delivered to Emmanuel Macron this Friday and leaked to the New York Times suggests just that. It recommends that tens of thousands of artefacts brought back to France during colonial times be returned permanently. Now, last November, on a visit to Burkina Faso, the French president promised major progress on the issue of restitution of African art over the next 5 years. But the report may well go further than the French president's good intentions. Some 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is held outside the continent by major museums. Now, next up, a look at where Africa meets the tech sector. A new generation of African entrepreneurs are using technology to bring solutions to some of the pressing societal issues across the continent. The niche industry has been dubbed Tech for Good. France 24's Julia Seeger has been talking to innovators from across Africa who are attending the Emerging Valley Summit. It's taking place in Aix-en-Provence. She sent us this report.
Tech for Good is booming in Africa, where necessity is the mother of innovation. The best example is how cell phones have brought financial inclusion services to the continent. Now, young African entrepreneurs are trying to find solutions to the biggest challenges, and here are some examples. Siret Sabalala has an inspiring story. After spending 11 years behind bars, he decided to create a coding school for kids living in townships in his native South Africa.
When I was about to turn 19, I got arrested and went to prison for 11 years. So coming out of that township, coming back to that township after spending 11 years in prison, and to realize that nothing much has changed, that's when I decided now to do something innovative, something audacious, and teach kids how to code. Because I wanted now to see what is it that was never been done in black townships before. And also now I'm all about challenging the status quo and the norms of these townships. Because in spite of the fact that we have big problems, big social problems from poverty, high unemployment rate, crime, teenage pregnancy, high school dropout, and also high illiteracy rate, I wanted to bring something that can be able now to compete with those social challenges. And coding for me was the solution.
Another important challenge is access to energy. In Togo, Astria Faraki is fighting to bring electricity to villages.
Energy Generation is a Pan-African organization that aims to incubate and invest in startups in the energy sector in Africa. Energy is a real vector of socioeconomic change, and yet in Africa there are not enough initiatives that are created by Africans for Africans to bring solutions that are adapted to the continent.
After Vision City in Rwanda, Hope City in Ghana, and Waterfall City in South Africa, Claude Borna is helping to create a tech-savvy city in Benin.
We call upon entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses from across the world, from Benin, from Africa, to come into solutions, to solve problems of sustainable housing, eco-friendly transport and agriculture so we can measure their efficiency and export them elsewhere.
There are, of course, many other examples of Tech for Good projects, inspiring initiatives that are putting people before profit and that are creating social change.
One of Niger's best-known musicians, Maman Barka, has died in the capital, Niamey. He was born in 1959 and devoted his career to the traditional music of Niger, gaining an international following. Some describe his music as desert blues. We'll close this bulletin with this extract of Barka playing the biram, a 5-stringed instrument played by the Buduma people around Lake Chad. Thanks for watching Eye on Africa.
Événement.
Chaque jour en France, des milliers de femmes sont victimes de violences physiques, sexuelles ou verbales.
At work, at home, on the street. Women want to live freely without the threat of abuse or violence.
ولأن كل امرأة ليست مجبرة على تحمل العنف فقط لكونها امرأة، فرنسا ستدعم مسيرة التضامن مع ضحايا العنف ضد النساء.
Et à l'occasion de la journée mondiale de lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes, je vous propose de nous retrouver ici même ce samedi, place de la Madeleine, les équipes de France 24 en français.
In English وبالعربية.
And we'll be reporting live on the protests.
سنكون مع لوحة اخترنا الحياة للاستسلام.
Vivez avec nous en direct sur France 24 cette journée de mobilisation.